Q3 5X categories and avoiding international ATM fees on today's Milenomics² podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Simon.
And I'm Robert Dwyer.
And this is the Milenomics² podcast, no annual fee edition.
If you're not subscribed to the full Milenomics² podcast, you're missing out on a deeper dive into topics like the following. Q3 is just around the corner. What do we have going on this quarter? Let's see. Chase Freedom, 5X, is gas and other stuff. I put other side. I don't know. They had a bunch of weird things out there. But Discover is grocery stores and Walmart. Could be useful. And Citi Dividend is gas. I don't have the Citi Dividend card anymore. Maybe I should stop talking about that one. But I know people still have that. At first glance, these look to be pretty useful categories, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, they're definitely, I would say they're gameable. But I mean, did you catch how big a deal Discover card is making out of this Walmart category?
No, I had some. It's not been a good year with me with Discover. I have gotten so many fraud alerts on that card. It is very difficult for me to use. I have had way too many personal calls with Discover in an early year. You know, they got that card that the first year you get everything doubled, so it's effectively 10% back the first year. But it's capped at $1,500 a quarter, and it's all a bit tedious with those fraud alerts and things like that. But what noise are they making about the Walmart tie-in?
Well, for the first time ever, 5X is including Walmart. That's what they said. I mean, they made a huge, for the first time in our history,
could bankrupt
5X
them
at Walmart. Right. Yeah, could. Yeah. $75 per card member, going to bankrupt them. Yeah.
Walmart is interesting, right? Because we've been doing more shopping there with that crazy Amex Platinum subscription that they give you. And
the Walmart Plus?
Yeah. I didn't think there would be too much, stuff there. I didn't know my local store supplied enough stuff to be useful for us, but we've gotten kind of addicted to it. And
same.
It's
so
come
convenient,
so fast,
right?
so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we need some diapers, not for me, for, a guest who was visiting, and it's like, boom, they're here in an hour. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. It's like faster than Amazon in some cases. And so the irony would be that you have Walmart Plus because of Amex, but then you place the order on Discover, I guess, so you need to categorically optimize it. I guess it's a good thing at the end of the day, but I don't know. It's an interesting thing going on in the grocery delivery space between Amazon and Whole Foods. And I hear there's a promotion out there for 3 months free of Amazon/Whole Foods delivery, and Walmart's doing this, and everyone's delivering stuff. It's kind of a post-pandemic look at what grocery delivery looks like. I'm here to watch the fight.
I mean, we're not doing a show on that, but one of the frustrating parts for me is how the delivery part is fantastic, but the inventory management is where I think it struggles, Robert. It's like you put in this order, there's a keystone item. You're like, I need those diapers.
Yeah.
Well, let me also add all this other stuff in because, we'll save a trip to the store. And then they tell you, like, the diapers are out of stock. The one thing you need is out of stock, but we're still going to bring everything else.
Yes,
and you go,
exactly.
Well, now I got to go to the store anyway.
Thank you.
So it is frustrating. I don't know how we got there from 5X categories, but we're here, right? And so grocery and gas, for the most part, are two of our favorite categories here on Milenomics in general. For the past 10 years plus, we've been playing around with those categories one way or another, and here we are, another quarter to play around with them. It obviously must work for the banks. What is this? They're trying to get their card to be the front of your wallet for your number one or number two expenses for the rest of the year, right? That's, I think, the reason behind these 5X categories, because they've got to be loss leaders for these card issuers.
Yeah. Just training you to dance, to do what they want to do. And yeah, you can have a lot of these cards and maybe move the needle a little bit, but yeah, right. I guess we started talking about them because we're thinking about potentially organically using it, and it's always debatable whether that actually moves the needle.
We do say that all the time, Robert. Real spend does not move the needle, and that's true. I mean, if we're going to, get down to it, this isn't going to materially change our lives, but it's important to mention because I think it's a stepping stone. We had that great show last week about stepping and graduating into a new program, and, here you got an opportunity to just kind of step into maybe manufacturing some spend here. Yeah,
I like it.
Anyways, hey, we've got the purchase side or the acquisition side of those points. Now let's talk about transfer bonuses with those points.
Yes, Citi to Cathay Pacific, 15%. Chase to Aeroplan for 20%. I think you get a little kicker there if you have the Chase Aeroplan credit card as well. Let's talk about the Citi to Cathay Pacific one. I am about to embark on a trip to Japan, and it will be funded through Cathay Pacific Asia Miles. And the nice thing about those miles is that you can book earlier than you can with Alaska or AA miles. And I took advantage of that. I booked it like 360 days out. You can't see the inventory on AA or Alaska until 330 or 325 days out. So I snatched it up, and it is a pretty nice little kicker here. 15% makes that a little bit nicer. The cancellation terms aren't quite as friendly as AA or Alaska, but it does give you that first opportunity to book it. And gosh, getting to Japan, it seems like everybody wants to get to Japan, and inventory release patterns have changed. I think we're going to talk on the paid show this week about some things I've been observing close in because the trends have changed there as well. So a constant moving target on the redemption side, but I do like the 15% to Cathay. What about Aeroplan? Have you redeemed an Aeroplan mile lately?
Lately, no. Historically, yes. I don't know if I can get excited for a 20% transfer bonus speculatively, but we talk about it. Everyone's going to Europe. Everyone's going to Japan. You've got two programs here that can do either of those things. And if you're doing those things, why not get this bonus? I think I like when bonuses stick around for a while because you can plan against them.
I was just looking today, actually. It occurs to me in reading this that Aeroplan could be a useful one for me. I saw ANA short notice award availability from O'Hare to Tokyo, and I might prefer to do that because it gets me departing a little bit earlier like I would like. But, and we've been talking on the paid show about some of these award alert services or search services. I forget which one. I think maybe both of the bigger ones I've been looking at lately. They showed this availability, and it said I could book it with Virgin Atlantic. I could book it with United. It didn't say that I could book it with Aeroplan. When I searched for it on Aeroplan's site, I didn't see it. When I searched for it on United's site, I did see it. If you want to book with Virgin Atlantic on ANA, you have to call. I called them, and after telling her my life story, she said the availability isn't there. So it's always such a tricky thing when partner space does really seem to be there, but not across all the partners. And I think that's a case of it. The ANA space is so elusive, and the worst thing in the world you could do is go to ANA's website directly and actually try to book, especially a one-way, which I don't think is possible there. So extremely complicated for 15 or 20%, I would say.
Yeah, that's an interesting pivot for us to have a conversation here. We're not necessarily going to fly Cathay with Cathay miles. We're not going to fly Aeroplan with Aeroplan miles. And those, in the history of miles, that was normal. That was like an everyday thing. Like we get into these foreign carriers, we use them to book partner awards, but we have seen that change. And we had a show here on the feed. We'll probably put it in the show notes where really the new hot thing in premium cabin award space is using the native miles for the carrier that you're going to fly and flying their own metal and paying maybe a little higher than the lowest possible rate. And so it is interesting to me that there could be someone out there that's going to fly Aeroplan because Aeroplan has better availability to where you want to go, and they have pricing that's not fantastic, but in some cases you see 100,000 Aeroplan miles, let's say, to get to Europe in a premium cabin. Well, this cuts that down a bit, and I do like that because I think that type of availability is easier to find than partner availability right now.
100% agree. That is absolutely what I've been saying. If you really, in a total pinch, needed to get somewhere and all you had was the carrier's miles, you're flying on that metal, you can fly with that carrier's miles. That's what ends up happening. And it's not a all or nothing proposition. It's like, okay, it's more miles than you wanted to pay, but you can't get there. And probably in a premium cabin internationally. So that's pretty great. So yeah, this can help with that.
Yeah. Well, we've got the expiration dates here in the show notes. Right around the end of July for both of them. But if we ever go in on one of these, we have to do a special breaking show, Robert. Breaking.
Almost never works out that way.
It almost never does. That's true. Yeah. Hey, news here about new Delta premium lounges, DeltaOne premium lounges coming in 2024. It's kind of amazing to me that these are going to be opening this year. There's one in JFK that's opening June, I think is the report. And then LAX late 2024 and Boston late 2024. And as an LAX traveler and Boston traveler, this is local news for both of us. But what's your take on this, Robert? I'll hold my take after I hear yours.
Well, Delta lounges have gotten quite nice. I mean, just the garden variety remodels that they've done in the past couple of years. You can go to a given airport and they'll have multiple lounges, and one will be this dowdy prior generation model. And this one will be like, oh, wow, this is one of the nicest lounges I've ever been to. And the weird thing in Boston is there's two. I said last week there's two. I fly out of Boston, Delta, a lot. There's a third one, evidently, over in the international terminal. And there's a regular terminal, a regular SkyClub there. And there's also this one adjacent to that. So they're stratifying things even within the lineup there. So you could have a very nice lounge and an even nicer lounge about it. And what did I fly out of? Out of Newark. Right, there's a Polaris lounge there, and so this is something they're all competing to have this higher end lounge. I think the one tangible thing that seems to define this higher end lounge is they've got table service restaurants in them. but they also can be quite crowded. And so to combat that crowdedness, they're putting restrictions on it. You can't just bumble in there if you have an Amex Platinum card. You'd be flying a DeltaOne flight, or there's some partners, business class. So it's a cat and mouse game to figure out how to dial that in to make it a nicer experience and not have it be overrun with people. But I'm bullish on it overall. Lounges really are getting nicer. And is there a point that they can build the lounge that's big enough to accommodate all the people who can rightfully access it? I don't know, but it seems like lounges are always overcrowded. But it seems like they're finding ways to build these to be very large, to accommodate a lot of people and make it more comfortable, because when it gets crowded, it doesn't matter how nice it is. I don't want to be in there. So that's my perspective on it. What's the lay of the land in LAX? Is this one that you can viably visit, or you have to really go out of your way to get to it?
Very similar situation in that there are 2 Delta lounges now at LAX. Delta has a pretty big presence here in LA, and they opened like a flagship Delta lounge. Everybody was all about it when it opened, and I've been to it twice. Once I went with my family, and recently I went last month, actually this month, and I walked in. It was so busy, I just walked right back out, and I went over to the other older lounge that was completely empty. And for me, I'm not big on lounges, Robert. I'm not, because I don't know with 100% certainty that I'm going to have no issues getting in. I'm going to have no space concerns or crowding. But here, I think they're trying to build themselves out of that, because, like you mentioned, they're not going to allow partnership with American Express cardholders to get into this lounge. I think that alone is good. I think the number of people with American Express cards has gotten out of control, and it's just a classic civil engineering trope that you cannot build yourself out of capacity issues. You just can't. And that's true of internet pipes, and that's true of freeway lanes, and that's true, apparently, of airport lounges as well, because the arms race of number of people want to go into the lounge versus how fast and how big you can build the lounges, it's never going to work. And, look at the Centurion lounges. I mean, I was in Denver, and the line to get into the line to get into the Centurion lounge was so long that they had set up like a rope to get onto the escalator to get up to get to the line to then put your name in. It's like,
you shared a picture with me. It looked just ridiculous. Why would you? I mean, the whole idea is to have a comfortable private space where you have a food and drinks maybe, and you end up standing in the longest line in the airport. I've seen that. I've seen it in Orlando. I've seen it at the Sapphire Lounge. I think that is coming to LA as well. We have had that in Boston for a while, and yes, a very nice lounge, but it's comical how many people get turned away there or let in as a one-time exception. And when you walk up to a lounge and you say, "I'm ready to go," and they say it's going to be a 45-minute wait, do you want to put your name on the list? That's a non-starter, because I tend to not get to the airport 45 minutes early for anything, and going to a lounge is definitely not one of them. So I don't know, maybe we just don't take enough connecting flights where it'd be useful. We try to avoid that at all costs, and probably try not to get to the airport as soon as possible. Yeah. Like, you want to kind of cut it close because you got other things to do in life. So I think we're on the same page on that. But it doesn't hurt to have more of these options if you find yourself in a delayed situation and there's a nice spacious lounge you can go to. I think it'd be great.
This is one of those spots where I want to be careful, right? Will I ever use this lounge? Probably not. And that's actually a good thing, I think, Robert, because it's back to the spirit of lounges, which is, premium cabin travelers or business class travelers or people that actually want to use it. But beyond that, it's going to sound crazy, but the solution to make lounges better is to make them harder to get into. I really believe that. Yeah. And this is that.
Yeah.
All right. How are we going to make this hard pivot, Robert? Because we really just have we're just going to dump on a company here that has been, I think we probably mentioned this company for the last 10 years in one way or another. And now we hate them so much. Isn't that just like the best intro to this next section of the show?
I think so. I'm sure people's minds are going crazy. Who is it? Is it plastic? Who is it?
It could be, right? I mean, yeah. Stop the show. Write down what you think we're going to talk about right now. And then I think we'll introduce
Let's give some more clues. Let's keep going with that. At one point, these were a fantastic way to earn miles and even hit sign-up bonuses. And you could gin up AA status just through this entity alone.
I like that tip. I think, Robert, I've used this service with pretty much, I'm running through my head, every single credit card issuer that I have a card with, either historically or recently. And I've used it to hit sign-up bonuses. I've used it to just manufacture miles. And that's what makes it even harder that we can't rely on it anymore.
No, it's gone completely south.
Have we teased it enough, Robert?
I think so.
What are we talking about?
Giftcards.com.
Awful. Just awful, right? I mean, just terrible.
I don't know what happened. Was this some intentional thing that they did to make their... I mean, what's great about them? On their face, if you see a shopping promo through giftcards.com, you're like, oh, this is great. I could buy things without really buying things because I don't want to go out and buy a bunch of stuff just to get some airline miles or something like that. So this provided a way, not free, but a way with the right alignment of incentives, promotions, and codes and such to
portals.
Yeah, right. And sometimes it's bonus, sometimes it's not. Like I said, it's a welcome bonus. It was a very useful entity in a number of different ways. But the big problem that's happened lately is that their gift cards, especially their Visa and MasterCard gift cards, have become so difficult to liquidate that I don't think they work the way they think they should work. I mean, I have tried these things all over the place, including Amazon.com, and they're accusing me of like hiring escorts and using gambling sites and stuff. I'm like, I'm trying to use it at Amazon.com. Oh, well, try another merchant. I'm like, what would be a more normal thing to do with a virtual Visa card than to try to use it at Amazon.com? Just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's awful. And look, we have seen a spike in fraud on prepaid gift cards. I get that. But if you're the issuer of the prepaid gift card, that's your problem, not my problem. And so they're treating us as if we are criminals because we purchased a prepaid gift card and want to use it at some of the more major retailers in the country. It's wild, Robert. I mean, I'm trying to use it at Chili's and they say, it's not going to work at Chili's. Like, they won't even tell you like where you can use it. They just say, make sure you use it at one of our approved locations. Like, what? How should I know that? It's just the whole thing is staggeringly bad right now to a point where you can buy the card. And if you gave anyone on earth a gift of a giftcards.com virtual MasterCard or Visa gift card, that's a gift you give your enemy.
Yeah.
Because it's just a beast of burden.
Total. Like a lot of online retailers don't allow split tender, right? So say you have a $100 one, a $200, whatever it is, and then your transaction is $300. You're going to want to maybe deplete this thing and then pay for the rest of it with another like credit card maybe. And a lot of retailers don't allow you to do that. So if you go right up to the limit, maybe there is also some overshoot, some pre-processing, some pre-checking or whatever. But at the end of the day, if I try to load even a much lesser amount to Amazon than what the value of the card is supposed to be, it's not working for me. And so I reach out to them and say, hey, furthermore, your balance checker doesn't work. Like, oh yeah, we're working on that. I'm like, what, your balance checker's broken and you're coming at me with these accusations? Like, what kind of operation is this?
If you get close to the limit, they think that's fraud, so then they decline the transaction. That's crazy too. We've seen that. I've seen that. And at the end of the day, I can't rely on these cards. And so if someone hasn't been in, I bought a ton of these, like just this year, Robert, in January. And that seems like forever ago. But they have changed dramatically and very quickly on how these cards can be used to liquidate. So it's frustrating because the numbers still look good on paper. There's high portal payouts or there's, good numbers of AA miles to try to get status or earn AA miles. You've got a decent like earn rate on a card or a sign up bonus. Everything seems the same, but then these show up and they're not the same. And that's really why I think we want to talk about it here as kind of a cautionary tale. And so then you're left, if you can't buy these in bulk and use them in a like really manufacturing miles kind of way, you're stuck with what we were talking about at the top end of this show, Robert, that what are you, shifting purchases? That does not move the needle. That categorically does not change your life at a level that I think it's worth doing. And then here you have like all of the issues. You could be shifting purchases and it doesn't work. Or you try to buy a gift card to Home Depot and it doesn't work. And then you're stuck with potentially a large amount of these. So I think it's more a public service announcement we're doing here, Robert. What do you want to add? Anything?
No, I think the thing I picked up on what you were just talking about there is it all looks like it always did. And unless you get in and try these things, you won't realize how far south it has gone. So just a tip that you have all the time is to really start slow and start small. When you're re-entering something after a long layoff, don't go off and buy 8 times 250 because the limits are 2,000. I'm sure there probably is some clever way to liquidate these things out there. I don't know what it is, but it's gotten so painful that I'm done trying for now.
Yeah, same, Robert. I mean, remember when they would like decline our purchases and we were like upset? Now they're like, oh, you can buy as many as you want, but you can't use them.
Yeah. It must be that someone over there wanted to have these used for higher breakage transactions. I can't think it's anything but that. Or, of course, fraud is a real good guess, but I just, man, not good. Totally south. One star.
100% breakages. Yeah, 1 star. I like that. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've done our public duty there on that, Robert. And now we're into a topic that I think is timely. I think a lot of people are going to be going on international trips in the next few weeks. and need cash when they get to that like final destination. Maybe not a ton of cash. I think most places are set up more than ever to take cards, but you always need to have a little bit of spending money, carrying money. And so we want to talk about how we're going to do that. And specifically, you leave in days. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, this is one I really started off thinking about which checking accounts have free ATM withdrawals worldwide. But it's really, I think, a broader question that I really want to dive deep into this, because maybe you don't want to mess with your checking account situation. Maybe you don't travel a lot internationally and you don't really care about kind of nuisance level fees. But I think everybody wants to avoid the case where they go to an ATM, they think they've done something fairly normal, and then they get home and see the total amount that was actually charged to them. And they're like, whoa, what happened there? I got fleeced. I took out $400 and it was actually $500. That's not right. There's a certain nuisance level that you can tolerate, and you don't want to be so scared and so vigilant about things that are really, trying to figure out the Suica card to be able to ride the Shinkansen or something like that. It's something that you really don't need to worry about. There's easier ways to do those things. But I think this is universal, and I think there are scary pitfalls that you could fall into. So that's what we're going to work through here today, I think.
Wow. I have different fears. And I think my number one fear is not getting fleeced. I mean, it's possible. I think it's possible. And I don't know if it was on a no annual fee show or a Patreon show. Went to Mexico and used an ATM and put my PIN in and went to take money out, and nothing came out of the ATM. And that was probably like the most potential loss I've ever had at
total
an ATM.
loss.
And total loss, yeah. And it was not a small amount of money, but there was a process. When I got home, I contacted my bank, and it's Charles Schwab, who we're going to talk later here. And they said, we'll open a case and we'll investigate. And if it turns out everything's okay, we'll refund you the money. And it took a week or two, and I don't know how they did that. I mean, I'm in this little
Imagine someone in Mexico.
ATM at a gas station in Mexico, and no money came out. How did Charles Schwab in Utah figure that out? Figured it out. The money was back in my account. So, that's not my big concern. My big concern, Robert, is this. I leave the country, I have my ATM card, I put it in, and it doesn't work. Or I put it in, and it's locked for fraud.
Well, what about you put it in and it eats it? I've had that happen to me.
Or exactly, yeah. And that's my biggest concern is I'm exposed without any other way to get cash. And, I think back, I've left the country many times with just the one debit card. And I know people say, oh, they'll overnight one to your hotel and all this stuff.
What? Really?
That's friction. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's
to Japan
definitely
from
friction.
some like little credit union or whatever you might have. I don't know if I'd count on that so much. I think redundancy is good here. And I think that's true of credit cards. And I think it's good of debit cards. I mean, I've been over in Japan and trying to buy theme park tickets or something like that. MasterCards don't work. Everyone knows that. Visa, blah, blah, blah. You need redundancy in this game. You need a bunch of different banks because you never know what weird card that you did. Bonus categories go out the window when you're unable to transact.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so true. Yeah.
And you've got to have redundancy in the system. So I'm going to bring 3 different debit cards to get over there. And I have to say, my personal situation is a total mess on this. The rug got pulled out from underneath me. I used to bank with First Republic. It got acquired by Chase. Their terms for free ATM withdrawals are way worse than they are before.
Way worse, yeah.
They sent out the new debit cards after the old ones stopped working. So there was a couple of days where nobody in the house was able to transact with their debit cards. And the kids kind of rely on these things, not to take money out of ATMs, but just to use them. So they bungled it on a number of levels over there. And then, the famous Schwab card. I do want to get into which banks are best for this, but let's walk through the basics of what to watch out for when you're taking money out of an ATM. And maybe even before we get there, just a reasonable person. How would you say you're going to need some money in a foreign land? How are you going to get that money? I can think of a lot of different ways that people might think to do that. They might stop at the exchange booth, bring some dollars, and go to the exchange booth and get fleeced there. I don't know what kind of percentage those things take, but what like if you bring $100 and say you want equivalent euros, what kind of percentage would a foreign exchange thing take?
There's like a bid-ask spread there too, right? Where they're gonna buy for a certain rate and sell for another rate. And so when you come home, you try to transfer back, then you're going to, I never like doing that for multiple reasons. Number one, I don't want to carry a large amount of cash.
Yeah.
The idea that people leave with like $2,000 worth of cash and go, I'm going to convert it all right when I get to the airport is so old school, Robert, right?
Yeah.
I think that one.
I think that's where taking money out of the ATM is probably the best way to go. A friend called a local bank that said, yeah, we'll sell you euros. Like, sell you euros before I go? That's almost even crazier. And they might take a cut on both directions. Have you come back and you have some euros, you want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
I went to Italy recently and I had a bunch of leftover euros, and it was quite nice because I didn't have to deal with it at the airport. I could, maybe I had enough to cover me. I don't mind having a couple $100 from, foreign countries that I go to frequently, because they can come in handy next time. I just look in my drawer. Hey, here's a couple $100. I don't need to stop for something. And I will say, things have gotten more accepting of credit cards, I think. Generally.
Absolutely.
A toll booth in Italy, the first terrifying thing, you're 10 minutes on your adventure and it's asking you for some euros and you don't have them. That's really scary, right? I don't like hitting a button and talking to someone in Italian about how to pay their toll. It's nice to just stick up a credit card and make that work. So I don't think you need cash as much, but you still definitely would like to have some, and some countries are more cash driven than others.
Yeah, that's true. And, I've for as long as I've been international traveling, I've been using Charles Schwab. I've been using their checking account for 20 years now, actually, Robert, it turns out. And so this is not a commercial for them. We have nothing to do with them. But when you said, look, I don't have my First Republic checking account anymore. I really need to figure this out because I'm leaving in a week. What do? I said, look, you've got a Schwab account. You need to kind of get it going. But that's a different situation. I got a 20-year relationship with Schwab, long history of using ATMs all over the world. You're going to go from zero Schwab to Japan 7-Eleven ATM. That's a big jump and could result in some issues. So what's your take on how you're going to do this?
Well, I like I said, I'm bringing back up. I'm bringing my Chase card just because I don't care if they charge me a 3% fee. In looking at this a little bit more, I think come up with some a ceiling on how much I should be if I don't do anything to make this better. How much will it cost, right? So say you have a ATM card that charges you to use somebody else's ATM. You could get hit with a fee from your current bank. You get hit with a fee from the other bank, like a fixed amount, like $3 to $5 or something like that per entity. Worst case, you're at like what, $5, $10, not the end of the world. You might have to pay in surveying all the major banks in the United States, around a 3% fee for a foreign exchange rate adjustment fee. And that's not the real scary thing to watch out for. And that's you were telling me about it yesterday, the dynamic currency that could happen if you select to withdraw in American dollars in a foreign country. You're getting euros or yen or whatever it is, but that could be an additional fee that might be more than 3%. And in some cases, could be a lot more than 3%.
I don't know where it can go, but the big takeaway is if you have an account at a bank that does no fees, no foreign transaction fees, and like rebates you the ATM fee as well, push the button to get the money in local currency every time. Yeah. That's the too long, don't read. That's it right there. Do that every time.
And that goes for purchases too, on a credit card, at a restaurant, at retail, anything like that. Always accepted the foreign currency. I was trying to think, why would someone do it in American dollars? And, as we'll get into a second with Schwab here, to fire up my relationship, I put $200 in there just to see if it worked. I went down to my corner bank. It didn't work. I have a Schwab card from 2021 that they haven't replaced. That's why it wasn't working. The thing was expired. But if you only have $200 in there and you're only treating this account as something you're not keeping a lot of money in, I could see why somebody would say, well, I know I have $200 in there. I'm in Thailand. I don't know how many baht this thing is, right? Like what?
Right.
Like if it's asking you whether you want it in US dollars or you would like 169,000 baht. I have no idea what 169,000 baht is. I don't know if I have that many baht in my checking account.
Yeah, I could see that too. But ultimately, I take out very little. The ubiquity of ATMs around the world. You're old enough, Robert. You remember this, right? The commercial with the little kid who's running around and the guy's kind of trying to figure everything out, and the kid's going, "That ATM will fix everything." That, yeah. And it was like, we got to try and find an ATM in this foreign country. Oh, this kid's going to lead us to it. I mean, they're everywhere. Every single 7-Eleven in Japan has an ATM. I've been on islands in the middle of nowhere. I've used ATMs, literally in the middle of nowhere. And when I haven't used an ATM, and everyone knows there's no way to get cash, the hotel goes, "Oh, charge it to your room and we'll give you cash." There's always a way. There's
countries where they take US dollars just fine. Bermuda is an example of that. It's kind of pegged to the US dollar. They're happy to take US dollars. But I don't think you could pull that off in Japan or Italy, right? That's not going to work.
No. What about could you walk? Is there a Chase branch in Tokyo that you could walk into in a pinch?
I don't think so. I don't know. I'll look. I'll let you know. No, what you said about wanting, you don't take out a lot. and you can't take it out as you need it. And I like that too. And that's where not having a lot of overshoot and then a bunch of currency to bring it back was really nice with the First Republic setup. I felt like a real smart guy. I could just take $100 out, $200 out, euros out, yen, whatever it was, and not be eaten away at those, maybe 10 to 20, maybe worse, depending on the amount that you're taking out fees. So I think that is a good idea. If you're going to travel at all internationally, come up with a way to do better than that. But the reason I am motivated to do this isn't for just the amount of fees that I will incur on any given trip. It's just the ability to nibble away and grab the amount of cash that I need, reasonably, a little bit of overshoot as we go. So let's talk about, though, what the current best banks are for avoiding these fees. And I think Schwab is the obvious one. And the reason I had a Schwab account was for the Schwab Platinum card. And the reason I had the Schwab Platinum card was for 1.1 cash out. And I think...
For Amex membership reward cash outs.
Yeah. I think I had to open a Schwab checking account in order to open a Schwab brokerage account to dump money into from Amex. I didn't do that intentionally. There's no welcome bonus there. But my friend said he has a Schwab brokerage account, but doesn't have a Schwab checking account. So I don't know if they actually are tied at the hip, but it should be easy to open a Schwab checking account. It's not like you have to put in a lot of money. You don't actually have to be premium. It's not
There's really like no fees, no gotchas. Yeah.
Everyone should be able to get one of those. And then if you have some money, you get the money there somehow. Maybe it comes from an Amex cash out and you can move it over from that brokerage account where it's resting as cash into a Schwab checking account, a bank. That's the confusing thing. The Volcker situation, right? Brokerages need to be separate from banks. Now every bank is tied up with a brokerage account, it seems like. And that's what's confusing to me because in interacting with Schwab, I called the number on the back of my card. It went in circles. I couldn't reach anybody. I then chatted. You said chat was good, and indeed it was. I was chatting with a ready to help human rather quickly. And he says, you might have to talk to the bank about this. And I'm like, the bank? I thought I was talking to the bank. Who are you? And he's with the brokerage side. I even thought to go to a local branch here because I thought some of the branches here were actually banks, but I don't think that's the case.
No, that's on the brokerage side.
So wait, there's no such thing as a Schwab bank that I can actually go into where I can deposit cash? There's no such thing in the world? Is it like a virtual bank? What kind of fintech have you messed me up with?
I don't think so. Yeah. I got you looped into it here, Robert. Yeah.
Click my link. Use my referral.
For a good number of people, that's an issue, right? I mean, you want to be able to walk into a bank. It is the exact opposite of First Republic.
Yes.
First Republic was a relationship bank, beyond like City National even. It was very much we're going to help you. I'm your person and you can talk to me about anything. And this is not that. And so it is definitely different. But again, like you mentioned, like no minimums, no fees. Even like there's a really small fee sometimes to take cash out. Like in Japan, it's 110 yen per 10,000, right? It's nothing. It's like 70 cents or something like that. They batched all those up and gave me those back as a refund. And when I've been in other countries as well, there have been fees that have been attached. And I think to myself, like, there's no way, but there has to be in the network a way that it's transmitted, like this is what we're taking and paying out, and this is the total that we're actually charging. And they take that difference and turn it into a rebate at the end of the month. And so if you can go without a person, a specific banker, and you can deal with the virtualness of Schwab Bank, I think you can enjoy it, Robert. I think you're going to come back. We're going to have to definitely pull the tape, but I think you're going to come back and you're going to be like, it just worked. It was glorious. It was great.
I'm totally on board with Schwab being a more virtual bank that I don't have to deal with, but I think they do need to sharpen up their phone tree. If I can't get somebody in a circle there, that's not great. I'm fine with things going online. Yes, there's some things I need in person. Occasionally, I'll need a notary. I don't need the cookies. I don't need the umbrellas, but it is nice sometimes when the kids have an issue with their debit card, they lost it, to go over there and get a new one. Happens right away. So I did chat with the person. The brokerage person was able to talk to the bank people, and the bank people said they were going to expedite a card out. So they said it'd be here in a day or two, which would be in time for me to do it. So I am looking forward to trying it. So I think that is a good way forward. Like, is there any way even with the Schwab to screw it up when you don't go to the transaction? I mean, like if you did that thing, like what you were saying, like I'm going to accept US dollars, the dynamic currency conversion, I think they would still charge me that. That's not part of their ATM rebating, is it?
No, they would not rebate you that. That's true, because what's going to happen is that those two line items, right? The ATM's going to say, hey, we pulled $75. And we also charged, 110 yen for the transaction fee, and they'll rebate you that. But that's why it's called dynamic currency conversion, because it happens without your bank knowing that they did anything.
Yeah. So probably the best way to go. But still, all these things. When we went to Japan last time, there was all these YouTube videos you could watch about how to catch the Narita Express, how to get your first Suica card. You can drive yourself crazy with all that stuff, right?
It's ridiculous.
If you're going to take one train ride, just go get some yen, buy the ticket, pop it in the machine.
Buy a paper ticket.
You go.
Yeah.
Or we were talking before, we had an emergency show yesterday, a private show to talk about this yesterday. And buying a Shinkansen ticket. There's a person sitting there that will speak to you in English and sell you a Shinkansen ticket with a credit card. Or you can go wrestle and battle the machine that's right next to that person. Just go to the person, right? They're nice and they'll help you right away.
But you know what? We're so conditioned. You mentioned this yesterday when you and I were talking on the phone. We're so conditioned here to default to the kiosk, default to the self-checkout, default to not dealing with a person because we're used to there being like one person and a line of 100 people. Yeah. But you leave the country and everything's reversed. Yeah. It's like there's a line for the kiosk and there's nobody to talk to the agent. And the agent actually ends up being the only one that's going to work because, joke's on you, your credit card won't work in the kiosk. Yep. And so if you default to letting people help you, I think you're going to end up in a better situation. Now, don't let a person help you use an ATM. That's definitely not what you want. And I would say that, people have mentioned, that like shady ATMs don't work or small ATMs don't work, or in this country, they had trouble finding an ATM that worked. Robert, I've never had that problem. I mean, I do this crazy thing though, this one crazy thing that helped when we were talking yesterday about this ATM problem, but I take pictures of the ATM screen on the last step. Where it shows me how much I'm going to take out and the fee. And I do that partially so that I can keep track of, I took this money out, and when I look at it online, it's transferred into dollars, and I can say, everything looks good there. But I also do it because I don't trust that they're going to spit out a receipt, and I don't want to walk around with receipts. And I have my phone with me all the time, so I take pictures of those screens. And I was actually able to show you a couple of those screens to show you what the dynamic currency conversion looks like. Maybe we'll throw one of those photos here in the show notes.
Let's do it. Super helpful. I mean, I've done this a bunch of times. What's crazy is I have new concerns, right? Things shifted underneath me. First Republic went away. I'm going back to a country where I might be taking more trains than I normally do. Things have changed in terms of whether your phone can do transactions automatically. The contingencies beneath there. So every trip is different. I don't want to make such a big deal out of it so as to freak people out. Hopefully want to put people at ease. Everything will be okay. But there are some good tips here, I think, for everybody who might be traveling internationally this summer.
Initially, we were only going to talk about ATMs, but then it just in our conversation in daily chatter that you and I had, another interesting topic came up related to international travel. You want to set the stage on this one?
Yeah, I think it's something that's similar in that it's a kind of a sneak attack that you didn't think about it and then you got there, or you did think about it, and that's international roaming on our cell phones. You got a lot of people in the family potentially, and it's one of those things where you go back to the old European vacation, right? She's making a bunch of phone calls from the hotel in Europe, and all of a sudden a massive bill shows up. Like, what were you doing making those calls? And I remember back in the day how precious a minute of talking, and the crazy things that you have done over the years on this. And I hope things have gotten less crazy, but it's still an issue. How do you have coverage, not for yourself, but for the whole family, to be able to use your phones for data, keep your cell phone number? Hopefully, maybe that's important. Maybe it's not. Let's go down and break it down. So how would somebody, what's the big mistake somebody can make? And then we'll work back from that to figure out how we might solve that, right? Like, if you, on a typical plan, Verizon or AT&T, if you just bumble over to Asia or Europe and you take no precautions whatsoever, I think you would be pretty easy to enable international data usage and potentially rack up a massive bill still. I still think that's possible.
You hear it every once in a while. Someone says they did everything right. They called and did it, and then they come home and they get this like insane bill. And I will say that in the past, I was nervous about that because your phone, and it's only gotten worse, Robert, your phone behind the scenes is doing massive things with data. I mean, it's doing things with data on the assumption, you set it up here in the United States where maybe you have unlimited data and you don't care. You don't care if your photos are all backed up to the cloud and your videos are all backed up to the cloud over mobile data. I personally don't care because I have unlimited data here. You don't care if you tether or if you watch streaming on Wi-Fi or on cellular. And I think the kids really represent an opportunity for that to go crazy too, because they're less aware, I think, of that switch, the Wi-Fi switch.
Yeah.
And, there are people that would say, like, well, all of this is a non-issue because what I do is when I leave, I turn airplane mode on and only turn Wi-Fi on, and I never use my phone anywhere at all. And I think that might have been okay a long time ago, Robert, but gosh, they're Uber, right? Uber's everywhere now.
Great point.
And
you're
going
to
go to Japan and you're going to need data. You really are. Like, you can't just hop from hotspot to hotspot and, what's the password here? Oh, it's Fluffy Pancake 7. Oh, what's the password here? I forgot,
It's just a needless point of stress, I would say. Yeah, you could hobble along like that. But, I've seen situations in that era, the, Wi-Fi only area. Oh, yeah, Wi-Fi's everywhere. Okay, you're at a train station trying to connect with somebody to pick you up. How'd that work out for you? There was no Wi-Fi there, right? So I think it really is, creeping into excessive frugality if we try to say, all right, everyone go on, use Wi-Fi only. All right, nobody use their phone like they normally do when they're here. That just is kind of a recipe for misery on a vacation. Maybe somebody will say, you need to disconnect, stop using your phone. But like you say, it's become essential to producing your boarding pass, to grabbing your train tickets, to any number of things. So I really don't think we can stick our head in the sand and just say we're not going to use our phones. So we got to figure out a way to make this comfortable. And I think there are a lot of different use models here. I remember one time I was on a cruise, and they had like some thing where you get 10 megabytes for free at the beginning to start off. Like you're saying, turn off the hotspot and everything. The second you would enable anything on that, you would gobble up all 10 megabytes. 10 megabytes, it was nothing even back then. And it was so absurd. It was so difficult. It reminded me too, turn everything off on the phone. Unless you're in airplane mode, and gosh, maybe not even then you're fully covered. It's very difficult to disable selectively things. So it's nice to be able to use your phone like normal when you're abroad.
No, I love that. The similar situation that I've had is sometimes you see this on premium cabins in flying internationally. They'll say the first 100 megs of Wi-Fi is free, and then it's $49.90. It's just crazy pricing sometimes on some of these carriers, and 100 megs, it disappears like so fast because your phone thinks that Wi-Fi is the safest place.
Yeah,
to
even
use
worse than cellular,
massive
right?
amounts of data. Right. So then as soon as you connect, your phone's like, I'm no longer on cellular. All the settings you gave me, I'm now going to go into, overdrive on, and boom, you run out of data super fast there. So I don't think a valid strategy is to become an expert in Android and iPhone metered data capturing and, figuring out how to get your phone to use the least amount of data. I think the better way to do this is, like you said, Robert, use your phone the way that you want to use your phone and figure out a way to be able to do that when you travel. But I do think I've outlined here in the show notes 4 areas where this becomes so individualized that it's really hard for us to have like this is the one thing that works. You've got who your current provider is. Right? If you're with Verizon and I give you a bunch of tips about how AT&T works in Mexico, who cares, right? You're not going to go and change your provider. That I think is nuts. There are people that will say like, go with Google Fi. Robert, are you ever going to change your phone provider to Google Fi to get international data?
I'm not going to let the 1% of my life rule the other 99%, right? Like an international trip is an exception, not the rule for me. If you're a digital nomad, maybe this is mission one. You want something that works internationally, is cheap and all that.
Yeah.
But for us, it's a once in a while kind of thing. So, that's how much I want to invest in it. But I think we're very different on this, like a lot of things. You're West Coast, I'm East Coast. I'm stick with the easy AT&T thing. I've got the family plan. I've got a lot of people hanging on that. I don't want to rock the boat there. So I want something that's dead simple. And I've tried the Wi-Fi hotspot type approaches maybe in the 5-year ago range. I could say that was complicated. You would try to get everybody to connect. It would lose the hotspot connection, trying to be efficient.
Somebody goes to the bathroom and then they come back, they get no data.
And it just drops all the time. Right, hotspots have never worked for me very well. So I backed off that a little bit. But I think you hit on a good hybrid kind of situation. You do something different than just turn it on and pay for it. But even your primary provider is probably not, I don't know who it is this month, but it's not AT&T or Verizon or something very mainstream. You try to optimize the everyday coverage that you have, right?
Oh yeah. I think I've got a plan for all 4 of us now, Robert. Actually, this is kind of new. We haven't talked cell phones in a while. My kids both have unlimited data and unlimited calls and texts, of course. My wife is on a restricted plan. She only has a few gigabytes, like 5 gigabytes or something like that, but she's at home all the time. She works from home. And I'm on an unlimited plan, and we have 3 different providers for the 4 of us.
Wow. Okay.
Now, but the plan matters because some plans have like no international data, and I actually prefer that, Robert. I want to leave the country and not have to worry about that bill showing up. So when you go with these like standard mainline, old school Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile plans, you have opportunities to make things easier, and it's the classic trade-off. Pay for convenience, right? I mean, you've done this in the past where I think your plan had a $10 per day international data option or something like that.
Yeah, I actually looked at that with fresh eyes just in preparation for the show. And that's what I thought I was indeed paying, $10 a day for each line. And I kind of look at it like parking at the airport. You know, it's a luxury. You can leave when you want. You park the car there and you come home and you don't have to wait around for a sketchy Uber with a check engine light on it, you know? And I liked it. It worked great. And I looked at it with fresh eyes today, though. It's now AT&T $12 a day for the primary and $6 a day for each additional line on the same plan. So they kind of recognize that better. Some people are, right. Like, you know, if you were doing one person and then everybody was hot spotting off that, they kind of give you some relief on the second ones. And if your trip is longer than 10 days in a month, they don't charge you any more than 10 days. So that is what I've settled at. That works out for family of four to be, what, $30 a day? So for a week-long trip, I'm paying, what, $210.
And at the end of the day, you know, that's not a huge amount of money. But, I mean, just 20 minutes ago, we're talking about optimizing ATM fees and making sure we don't spend an extra $4 or $5 each time we take out $100. So,
I totally agree. I mean, that hit is bigger than anything, almost anything, any mistake you can make on the ATM charges. So, yeah, it is a little bit of a leak. I like it for the convenience. The biggest thing that I want to deal with somebody in my travel party is, did you turn on international roaming? Is your phone working when we get there? It's a great thing when you're taxiing to be able to do that and then be able to sit there and zone out looking at Instagram Reels or whatever you want. I like that.
I like that too, Robert, but I think we handle it differently. And like you said, most things we do are really different. And one of the big differences is I'm an Android user and you're an iPhone user, right?
It goes along with the simplicity. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a third area where this is very unique, because something that I tell you to do might not work on an iPhone, and something that works for you really well, or one of your big concerns might be iMessage. I don't care about iMessage. So, you know, personally, what you need really is something that's super important. And I think the last one would be, where are you going? You know, where you're going is important too, Robert. There are places where you get free data, right? Like I just mentioned, you go to Mexico. Don't even, if you can figure out how the data works and you have international data, or your plan has slow speed data and it's going to be enough for you, then maybe that's fine. You know, someone that I would love to talk about this with, Robert, is Raymond from the Points Project. Have I talked to you about him at all?
No. What does he do that for international roaming? Is it something related to that?
Well, I can't speak for exactly what he's doing, but you know, I have this crazy thing that I do, and I'm Android, how he's utilized some of those things I do on iPhone. And I think that would be really an interesting thing to discuss, and I hope maybe either on his show or we can get him on one of our shows. I think it's important to find someone that uses at least the phone you use, because the plan might be different, all that other stuff might be different, but the steps to do some of the things, I think you got to find something that's an easy walkthrough for that. So that said, Robert, have you ever done the following? Have you ever landed and then had to find a physical SIM card somewhere and, you know, give them your passport or do a live chat session on an app on your phone? And have you ever done that in a foreign country?
No, I never have, and I've thought about it. But what you're saying here about eSIMs is, it's not, the concept of an eSIM is not new to me, but interacting with it in terms of an international data plan is new to me. So walk us through that. What's the difference between that, and does it work on, if your phone has an eSIM, how does that parlay into what you might do for international roaming?
Gosh, it's changed everything, Robert. I mean, I use a lot of data. You know, I use a lot of data, and I used to consult the prepaid data wiki and find which plan to get. And I can remember like riding a train to go to an Aldi's in Germany and buy a SIM card, and ladies asking me all these questions in German. And now, I mean, you've got providers. We'll give a few different providers here in the show notes. There's probably dozens of companies that are selling eSIMs for international data. And basically what it is the same way you set your phone up when you got an eSIM. You know, there's a little QR code or whatever, you scan it and you insert it into that menu in your phone that has an eSIM, and it says, we're going to register you with this network. You can do all of that from the comfort of your home here in the United States, or you can do it from your hotel when you get there, or you can do it on the airplane on the way there on their Wi-Fi. And when you land, it just works. It's just amazing, Robert. It has changed my life as far as international data, because, you know, last summer I went to Japan and that's actually a really tough country to get service in, and you're going there in a couple days. So, it's tough to get a SIM card, and it's tough to get, I don't think they'll give you a phone number. It's just data. Or a lot of places were renting that hotspot. Have you heard about that in Japan as well?
That's maybe something I tried. Like when you say rent a hotspot, you're renting a physical device that serves as a hotspot for everybody in the group. Yeah, I don't like that, and I don't like anything where when I'm landing, the first thing I do is have to go to the ATM and then go over to the crazy kiosk. It's just the whole thing is like I want to get to my hotel. I don't want to deal with like all these startup costs, and it goes to the duration of a trip. If I'm moving someplace,
it's so true.
I'm willing to tolerate this stuff. If my trip is a weekend or a week, I just want to get on with it. So I like the idea of an eSIM here. Now, let me ask this. I remember at one point people wanted the iPhone to be a dual SIM. So you'd have an eSIM and it may be your main one, and both would still work, like if somebody called you or something like that. Not that I make a lot of calls, but I think in most cases what you're talking about here is you're switching over to the other phone number, the other SIM, at least for data, and you're leaving the other world behind, right? So you're saying, I'm on an international trip, I'm using my eSIM for my data, and if you're going to be accessing something else, it's going to be through Google Voice or something like that, and your normal phone number is not going to work. Is that right?
That's right. You have to have dual eSIM capability. Otherwise, there's a lot of points where this can fail. Number one would be if you don't have dual eSIM and you delete your current SIM to put one of these in, you come home, you have no service.
Right.
But, it's a technical thing, and it's really technical as far as like what phone you use, but we're moving in that direction for dual eSIM. And yeah, you just install that extra SIM, disconnect your current SIM, say, I don't want to use this SIM right now for anything. This is my default for everything. And, it just registers with the network. You're on that network. Your phone is working. In some cases and in some countries, you get a phone number. In some countries, you just get data, and that's fine with me. But yeah, you're right. You have to. There are trade-offs, right? Like if somebody wants to call you, well, they're not going to get you.
If you have a dual eSIM in, and they're both, can you have them both activated, or like that's not possible? You're doing one or the other. Because I think it would be if you had them both activated, you'd be picking which one you were going to use all the time, and that would get confusing. But is there a way to maintain your old phone number but use the eSIM for data?
Yeah, again, phone by phone, right? You can pick which SIM you want to use for what. And so this goes to like the history of that is, countries where you have like a phone plan where you have like unlimited calls but no data. And then every once in a while you'll add data on another one. So you can tell your phone, I want calls to go through this SIM and I want data to go through this SIM. The danger with that is I don't know if calls will work internationally without data. I don't know that they can register you on the network without data, and I'm not using that. That's not my use case. I'm 100% data, and I've created this weird situation where my phone number is kind of decoupled from any of the providers, so I can still make phone calls through Google Voice whenever and wherever. And so it's hard, really difficult to give advice. It's more difficult than the ATM conversation, I think, Robert, because it's not as simple as sign up for this one thing and everything will work. Sign up for Schwab and it'll just work. But I think the idea is investigate these eSIMs. Look into these providers. They even sell eSIMs for the United States. So something that you could do here, Robert, is buy the cheapest US eSIM from them, install it in your phone and give it a shot and see what it's like to change over to that other eSIM here in the United States with one of these providers. And I don't have any stake in any of them. I've used Aeroplan or whatever it's called with success, and I do like that their customer service seems good. But again, it's very much a commodity at this point of data, overseas data. And I'm going to use it in Norway. I already bought the eSIM for Norway this morning, and when I decide I'm done with the United States, I'll just put that in my phone, put it in my wife's phone. One wrinkle is my two kids do not have eSIM compatible phones. So they're going to have to use hotspots, I think, Robert, which, that's not great. That's not ideal, but that's a limitation of their phone. And that's one of those 4 limitations we talked about earlier.
When you say you're going to put the eSIM in your wife's phone too, does she have her own eSIM, or can you reuse an eSIM across 2 phones?
No, I'll have to pay twice. But I don't think I even talked about it. I think last summer in Japan was $10 for 5 gigs. I bought it once for each of our phones. We never used all the data. And that was it. It's a square deal. And I like that. I think it's more my style, unlimited or near unlimited. and then just let everybody use their phone the way they want and not have to stress the bill at the end of the trip. And I can spend that money on something else.
Well, let me ask you this. You say you have the one for Norway already. Does it only work in Norway, or does it work anywhere internationally? Like, can you activate it now and use the Norway eSIM in the United States?
I don't think I can, no, because it's with a provider in Norway. And, you know, it doesn't actually tell you who the provider is going to be until you actually connect on their network. And then it'll say in the top, you know, it'll say T-Mobile or Orange or SoftBank or whoever the provider in the local place is. It will eventually say that when you get there. But the eSIM provider that I have is just saying Norway. There are region-specific SIMs that I've seen in some of these cases, which are nice, Robert, because if you're jumping around, you know, you're going from Paris to Spain, maybe you're going to bounce over to Germany, you buy like a Europe pass, and it works in all those countries. And sometimes it's wild. Sometimes the regional pass is cheaper than a country-specific pass. Or sometimes it's really wacky stuff. You know, I mean, it's the infancy of it all. It reminds me of, you know, currency conversion, which we're talking about up thread here or a little bit earlier in the show. And
so if you fly, say, and stop in Paris, your eSIM wouldn't work there, or would it?
So I would buy a Euro pass for that. You got to weigh the pros and the cons. You could buy one for each country, and then you could just install that SIM when you get to the country. But going back, getting an eSIM reinstalled is difficult. So I think there's a technological hurdle here for sure, right? And there's always that trade-off. Do you want to spend the $200 for 7 days of data for everybody, or do you want to spend $20 or $30 for 7 days of data? If you do, you've got to, you know, get over those hurdles and figure out what's going to work for you and when. But for my situation, let's say on the front end of my trip, I was going to Norway, and then I was going to build a few days in Paris afterwards. I would just wait till I get to Paris and buy a pass for Paris, because the Europe pass is more expensive than the Norway pass and the Paris pass.
So walk us through what reentry looks like. Then you're flying into LA, you land, and as you can start using your cell phone. What do you do? How do you reinstall what your normal plan was before then? And this would work, I assume. If I don't know what the state of the current iPhone is, I probably should. But if say that has dual eSIM, I would keep my normal plan with AT&T. When I went internationally, I would swap in the second eSIM to be whatever the thing was. How do I reactivate whatever I had before, whether that's AT&T or whatever you have right now?
Yeah, it's going to be the reverse of your first step, which was turn that SIM off. So I'm going to just jump back into my SIM card menu and turn my local SIM back on. And again, the nice part is if I bungle that, I don't have any data or roaming or anything from this eSIM. There's nothing there. It's not tied to anything. It's a prepaid bucket of data. So you're just turning your local service off when you leave the country and then turning your local service back on when you decide you want to be back in the United States. Is this worth even talking about?
Yes.
After we talk about it. Yeah?
Absolutely.
You know, one thing that I don't really get, Robert, is people are really like wanting to be able to get their text messages and all their phone calls while they're on a trip. Mm-hmm. And I get that, but I mean, have you ever had like long conversations with people while you're on vacation?
It's almost all data, but I do see the importance of disrupting somebody's text message number could be very impactful to people. Group chats and things like that could be a negative impact I could see on people in my life.
No, that's a good point. But again, aren't most of those over data anyway?
That goes to the question of whether iMessage, I think, would work, and when you're connected to the eSIM, or whether there's some contingency on it being your actual number.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what people are doing. I mean, I think that this is a complicated situation. I've got a very thin slice of what I'm an expert at, Robert. It's my wild and crazy phone plan with my weird setup and my eSIMs on my specific phone. But I think that others have had success with this. We've had conversations on our Slack channel for like a year or more on this, and I think that it really is an interesting wrinkle. You know, coming out of the pandemic, we have people that maybe haven't traveled since before eSIMs became very popular, or these international eSIMs. And so this is really like, it represents a wild change from what has been in the past the way to get data overseas.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, you took the same trip 5 years ago and you're like, wait, I should be good at this. I've forgotten everything I did before and things have gotten different. So it's always worth checking in on to make sure that your information is current, even if you took the same trip before.
That's a great tip. Should we close it out?
Thanks for joining us this week. For a more in-depth discussion about points and miles, visit us at patreon.com/Milenomics. There you'll get a special link to listen to additional content right in your mobile podcast app or on your computer, where we speak more freely about topics like these.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.